Uh, so this has been a topic of conversation for the last 2 weeks. And for the first time in our lifetime, we have a chance to see police officers and the institution of policing testify against one of their fellow officers, right? We also get a chance to see how the system treats and responds to one of their own that has committed a crime against a Black man, right? And we all saw it in HD on TV. And so I think for a lot of people who are, concerned that justice will not prevail, because we've always seen justice not prevail in these cases, I caution the people who are cautiously optimistic that there are facts in this case that we've never seen before, right? Police officers testifying against other officers. We have a full video that showed what happened just before he was murdered and what happened just after. We've had medical personnel testify that he could have been saved. You've had fellow officers who said that what the officer Chauvin did was not protocol. It wasn't a part of training. You have a world that has protested around the victim. So I think that what we also see now are the circumstances that need to exist in order to hold a police officer accountable, right? Which on the other hand is scary, because all police murders are not going to have all of these facts around, right? Which now argues naturally for more cameras, right? We need more laws, obviously, to protect people against officers who don't have video around them, right? And so it's a whole new reality that we face, and I think that I'll give you an example. I was on the news yesterday, and the police union guy said that justice has been served because Derek Chauvin has lost his job. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, how do we see that as justice for a murder, right? But we never see that as justice for a murder in other cases, right? So I think we're moving in the right direction, but unfortunately it took all of this to move in the right direction, right? We thought Rodney King was going to be the move in the right direction. We thought Emmett Till was going to be the move in the right direction. We have so many cases that didn't happen. We thought Trayvon Martin was going to be the move in the right direction, right? We thought Philando Castile was going to be the move in the right direction. George Floyd, can you believe it? I think he's going to be the example. He's going to be the face of criminal justice reform. And who would have thought that, right? We have tons of examples, but who would have thought the guy from Houston is going to be the one to change all of this, right? And he's revealed through his death and victimization that it's not just the officer that we need to deal with, but we need to deal with the system. We need to deal with policies, because until we address the underlying issues, nothing really changes. Mm-hmm. Number one, fair representation, right? Making sure that, our experience is treated just like anyone else's experience, right? We expect compassion like people with money are treated compassionately. I think that's the first issue. I think the second issue is that many of the issues that have been placed before the criminal justice system don't belong in the criminal justice system, right? Mental health, right? Employment, housing opportunity and access, livable wages. All of those issues have nothing to do with the criminal justice system, but yet they do. And if I was in charge of the criminal justice system, I would be asking those questions. what are you all going to do with your systems to make sure they don't come before us? Because that's ultimately what happens when those other systems break down. The criminal justice system is there to address the errors of the other governmental systems that have broken down. One, he's got to change the relationship between the police and the community. Right? He has to get out in the community, right? And being from the community, he has a leg up in that regard, right? But what he's got to do, though, is he's got to get the folks that work for him to adopt that philosophy, right? If the chief is going to be pro-community, then everyone below him, the command staff, the line level officers have to adopt that. But I think the other elephant in the room is that here's a chief who has a college education, okay? He's got to begin to require that among all his officers, right? The Houston Police Department, because of recruiting issues and claims that they couldn't find anyone, they reduced their educational requirement for officers, which is a bad thing in the wrong direction. The research tells us that police officers with college degrees are 40% less likely to be involved in use of force cases. They're more likely to adopt community policing practices. Educated police officers make a difference. And it's time out for blaming all the other issues, and let's deal with the institution and begin to professionalize policing. The chief's got to do that. The chief has got to be a major proponent of making sure his officers are the most educated. But he's also got to make sure that he recruits officers from the community. We're working with the African American Police Officers League. We're working with the Houston Police Union to create an opportunity and a pipeline for TSU students to begin to work for the Houston Police Department. Right now, last count we saw, there were 300 TSU graduates working for the Houston Police Department. If anybody's going to fix this problem, it's going to be TSU and other HBCUs to say, listen, we need more Black officers. We need officers who understand the community. Chief's got to make sure he spearheads that. But I think ultimately the chief has got to be able to hold officers accountable. If an officer does something wrong and it can be verified, that person got to be dealt with. Officer accountability is the name of the game. We understand that if people perceive the police to be legitimate, it affects crime in that community. Number one, the community's got to be organized in their approach in dealing with a system, an institution. I mean, policing is as old as America. And it started out as an opportunity for rich slave owners in the South to control their property. And we know who their property was in the South. In the North, it looked a little different. But in the South, African Americans and policing have a very intimate relationship because they were the slave patrollers and their job was to make sure they went out and found escaped slaves. But the community's got to be able to organize and express what they see in the community, right? They got to be able to tell the police, listen, this is what we're dealing with, right? No one likes violent crime, right? The police need the community to be engaged in this conversation. This no snitching reality that we have in some of our communities, we have to get rid of that because there are people who are being victimized, and as violent crime is on the increase, particularly gun-related assaults, homicide and domestic violence, we have to be able to deal with those issues, and the police need us to grapple with those in these spaces.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add about the whole just criminal justice fight?
Yeah, I think, you doing what you're doing and your outlets, it makes a difference because I think many of these issues that we're facing happen in behind closed doors. And a lot of folks didn't know it, right? If you didn't grow up in an environment where you saw the police or you experienced the criminal justice system, you wouldn't believe this. Like, there are people who were surprised that Derek Chauvin sat on that boy's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But those are things police have been doing for years. And I think the more we educate, the more stories that we're able to highlight, the more we're able to lift up people's experiences, the more people are going to be exposed to the reality of criminal injustice in our system.
Okay.
There's no other way to do it, right? If we're in a situation where we know what works and we know what doesn't work, right? It's time out for what you believe and folklore and your emotions. We know what makes policing effective. We know what reduces crime in the community. We know what holds officers accountable. We got to be able to make more calculated decisions. We can no longer afford to be allowing politics to govern the way we interact with the police in these communities. You know, you doing what you're doing and your outlets, it makes a difference, because I think many of these issues that we're facing happen in behind closed doors. And a lot of folks didn't know, right? If you didn't grow up in an environment where you saw the police or you experienced the criminal justice system, you wouldn't believe this. Like, there are people who were surprised that Derek Chauvin sat on that boy's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But those are things police have been doing for years. And I think the more we educate, the more stories that we're able to highlight, the more we're able to lift up people's experiences, the more people are going to be exposed to the reality of criminal injustice in our system.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.